Hello and welcome back to the Visionary Chronicles. I'm Bryan Smeltzer. I spent 30 years in executive leadership, Oakley, adidas, TaylorMade, K-Swiss, to mention a few brands. Built and sold my own brand to a VC firm, and now I advise CMOs and brand leaders through LiquidMind on building brands that are generational. And today in the Visionary Chronicles, we're going to talk about what I call human plus AI leadership, what I call balancing machine intelligence with human judgment. And today on the episode, every leader today is being sold the same false choice right now, let's say. Either you hand the decision to a machine or you cling to your gut and get left behind. Honestly, both are wrong. The visionary leader does not choose between machine intelligence and human judgment. They architect the relationship between them. And today I'm giving you what I call this 5-point or 5-part framework for you to understand exactly how this balance works, because it's such a challenge. It's this fast-moving train. And I can tell you from experience, and when leaders reach out to me, ask questions, when we whiteboard these strategies on how to implement AI, this is truly one of the subjects that we spend a significant amount of time on. So I wanted to kind of give you a context, some principles and a framework for how this balance works, machine intelligence and human judgment. Because not a lot of people understand it. They may fake it, but they don't understand it. And we'll outline where this line sits and how to know which side of it you're standing on right now. So I always start with a quote, and this actually comes from my book, The Visionary Leader, is the machine does not know what matters. That is still your job, and it will always be your job. So why does this matter? And the reason it matters because there's a conversation happening in every boardroom right now, and almost all of it is framed wrong. And this comes again from LiquidMind, brand advisory firm that I own, that we talk to a lot of leaders around the world. And it's just not Fortune 500. We do work with several of those, but it's also startups, mid-cap, small-cap companies, whatever it is. It's the same framing, which is wrong, and why I want to talk about it today. The question being asked is this: how much do we hand over to AI? That's the question, right? As if leadership were a dial you turn. More machine, less human. Less human, more machine. And if the two were in competition for the same territory, they are not. Machine intelligence and human judgment do fundamentally different work. AI is extraordinary, but at pattern, scale, speed, and recall, it is genuinely superhuman. Let's just put it out there honestly, at seeing what has happened. Do you notice I use past tense? Human judgment is what determines what matters, what is right, and what should happen next, in a context the data has never seen. What I find is the leaders who are struggling right now are the ones treating those as interchangeable. They either delegate judgment to a system that cannot exercise it, or they refuse the leverage of a tool that would make their judgment sharper. So you can see the balancing act that I'm getting at, and we'll talk about that today. The visionary leader does something entirely different. They architect the relationship. They know exactly where the machine ends and they begin. And they design the organization around that boundary deliberately. So I'm going to go through 5 concepts, and hopefully it helps you kind of understand the context of balancing machine intelligence and human judgment. and how they can interconnect and work together. So, the concept one that we'll talk about is the division of labor, I call it. Know what only you can do. And the first thing every visionary leader must do is stop asking what AI can do and start asking what only a human can do. It's an interesting perspective, isn't it? Think about most of the conversations that you have in the boardroom or talking with people today is what can AI do? Well, if you want to separate machine intelligence with human judgment, you need to understand what can a human only do, because that is a list shorter than it used to be. I'll admit to that. And far more valuable than it has ever been. Interesting perspective, right? A little bit of an oxymoron, but it is absolutely true. AI is better than you at recall. Admit it. Stop fighting that fact. Better at synthesis around enormous volume of data and information. Better at spotting statistical patterns. Better at generating 100 options in a time what it takes you to generate 3. Competing on that ground is a losing strategy, and it always will be. So, along with the realization of what a human can do, you would understand completely and admit to the fact of what AI can do and supplement you with. But there are 4 things AI cannot do, and we're going to talk about that. And there are 4 things leadership has always actually been about. First, AI cannot decide what matters. It can rank options against a goal you gave it. It cannot tell you the goal was wrong. Second, AI cannot carry accountability. When the decision fails, no model absorbs the consequence. You do. And that asymmetrical is not a technicality. It's an entire reason judgment exists. Third is AI cannot read the room. And we know what this is. You have to be there. It cannot sense that your best engineer is quietly checked out, that the board is nervous for reasons no one has said aloud, or that the market is about to move on sentiment no data set has captured yet. And fourth, AI cannot hold conviction. It has no stake. It doesn't care. It will argue any side with equal confidence. Conviction, the willingness to be personally wrong in public in service of a vision, is uniquely and permanently human. Let me give you an example, and I love doing this so you can get an idea as I talk to a lot of brands, consumer products around the world, and leaders. They love to have examples of brands and how they applied these principles. So one is Yeti. In 2006, the Siders brothers decided to sell a cooler for $300. Every piece of market data available said it was insane. You're crazy. The category had a price ceiling around $40, and it had held there for decades. No model reasons its way to a $300 cooler because there was nothing in the data to reason from. What existed instead was a conviction about a customer the research had never met. Someone who would pay for a cooler that did not fail. The data described the market that existed. Judgment described the market that did not exist yet. That gap is where human belongs. Another example is Netflix. Netflix is the most sophisticated recommendation algorithm company in the world. And the decision to move from DVDs to streaming, then from streaming to original content, was not made by the algorithm. It was made by leaders who chose to cannibalize a profitable business. Think about that. That takes some balls. Apple is the only other company I've seen do this and do it successfully. They cannibalized a profitable business based on conviction about a future the data had not yet confirmed. The algorithm optimizes the business you have. Human judgment decides which business to be in. So here's a principle. AI answers the question you asked. Only you can decide whether it was the right question. Never delegate the question. So here's your application. Write down the 5 most consequential decisions you will make this quarter. For each one, mark it. Could a well-instructed AI make this decision as well as I could? Be honest with this. The ones where the answer is no, those are your actual job. Protect that time ruthlessly. Everything else is a candidate for leverage. Concept 2 is what I call the judgment line, where the machine stops and you begin. Once you know the division of labor, the next question is the practical one. Where exactly is the line? And it's a tough one. It's not easy. Most organizations have never drawn it. They've drawn an AI policy about data security and nothing at all about question. And deciding authority. So the line gets drawn by default by whoever is fastest, busiest, or most convenient. This is not governance. That's drift. So here's the principle. Visionary leaders draw the line deliberately, and they draw it using 2 variables. Remember these: reversibility and stakes. If a decision is reversible and low stakes, let the machine run. Delegate it fully and stop spending human attention on it. Most organizations dramatically underdelegate here. Senior people burning judgment on decisions that do not require any. If a decision is reversible but high stakes, let AI prepare and a human decide. The machine builds the case, you make the call. If a decision is irreversible, regardless of stakes, a human decides every time with AI as input only. Not because the machine is unreliable, but because irreversible decisions require someone to own, guess what? The consequence. And ownership cannot be automated. And here's the part most leaders miss. The line moves. As your systems get better, decisions migrate from the human column to the machine column. That migration should be a deliberate act of leadership, reviewed, decided, documented. Never a thing that just quietly happens in your organization. And here's a brand example of this. And Tesla. Tesla is the cleanest illustration of both sides of this line operating inside one company. Over-the-air software updates are the purest two-way door in modern consumer products. Ship it, watch the fleet data, roll it back by Thursday if it's wrong. That is a decision that should move fast and low, and increasingly should be machine assisted. But the decision to strip radar out of vehicles entirely and go vision only was a one-way door. Hardware coming off the line, years of engineering commitment, regulators watching. No amount of modeling makes that decision for you, because someone has to own what happens if it's wrong. Same company, same week, 2 completely different classes of decision. And the leadership discipline is knowing which one you're holding. Second one is Starbucks. In February of 2008, Howard Schultz literally closed 7,100 US stores for 3.5 hours to retrain every barista on espresso. It cost roughly $6 million in lost sales in a single afternoon during a recession with the stock already under pressure. Would you do that? There's no optimization model on earth that outputs close every store. Every system would have told him to phase it, pilot it, do it regionally. He did it all at once because the point was not the training. The point was the signal to 170,000 partners that quality was not negotiable. That's an irreversible brand-defining call. It stays human every time. So here's the principle out of this concept. Draw the judgment line on two axes. If you look at it, just draw two axes. Reversibility and stakes. Reversibility, stakes. Irreversible always stays human. And when the line moves, move it on purpose. And here's your application, your takeaway. Take your 10 most frequent organizational decisions, sort each into one of three buckets. Bucket 1, machine decides. 2 is machine prepares. 3 is human decide. 4 is human decides. Write it down, one page. Machine decides, machine prepares, and human decides. Write it down, one page. Share it with your leadership team this week. If you cannot name where the line is, your organization is drawing it for you. Now, concept 3 is the fluency trap, what I call why confident output is the real risk. Here's the risk because almost nobody is managing, and it's the one that will cause the most damage over the next 5 years. I get your attention? The danger of AI in leadership is not that it will be obviously wrong. Obviously wrong is easy. You catch it and you move on. The thing that we always bring up in our whiteboard sessions with leaders on AI integration with their leaders is the danger is that it will be fluently, confidently, plausibly wrong. And that fluency will feel like authority to you. A polished answer produces the same feeling in your brain as a correct answer. Did you know that? That's the trap. Your judgment gets bypassed, not because you decided to trust the machine, but because the output was so well formed, you never engaged your judgment at all. You didn't question it because it looked beautiful. It has to be right. So here's the principle for visionary leaders. Visionary leaders treat polish as warning, not a credential. They build in 3 habits. First, they ask for argument against any input that cannot survive an inversion was never robust. It was just articulate. Again, they ask for the argument against any output that cannot survive an inversion and decision was never robust in the first place. It was just articulate. Second, they interrogate the source. Where did this come from? What is it inferring versus what does it actually know? Fluent text hides the difference between a fact and a plausible guess, and that difference is everything. And third, and this is the discipline that separates real leaders from just managers, they check the output against experience the model does not have. You have 30 years of pattern recognition that lives nowhere in any training set. That is not nostalgia. That's proprietary data. Use it. The leaders who lose their judgment to AI, I find, will not lose it in a dramatic moment. They will lose it gradually, one plausible answer at a time until the muscle atrophies from disuse. Remember that. And I'll give you a couple examples. This is Coca-Cola. A new Coke is the single best, let's just say, case study in the fluency trap ever recorded. And it happened 40 years before anyone said the word AI. Coca-Cola ran, let's just say, roughly 200,000 taste tests. The methodology was rigorous. The sample was enormous. The result was unfortunately ambiguous. People preferred the new formula. Every number was clean. It was one of the most catastrophic brand decisions in American history. Withdrawn in 79 days after hitting the market. Because the research measured taste. It did not measure meaning. Nobody in a blind sip taste can tell you what the red can means to them. That is not a question a sip test can hold. The data was not wrong. It was fluent, confident in answering a question that was not the question. That is exactly what AI does at scale now, 1,000 times a day in your organization. So here's the principle, the takeaway from this concept is fluency is not accuracy. If an answer arrives polished and you accept it without friction, you did not make a decision. You just received it. So here's the application I would like you to do this week. Next time an AI hands you a strong recommendation, do 3 things before you act on it. Ask it to argue the opposite side as forcefully as it argued the first side. Second is ask what it would need to know to be confident and whether it actually knows it. Then ask yourself, based on the information you've received, what do I know that this system could not possibly know? Write it down. That sentence is your value, not the machine's. And concept 4 is the human premium, what I call what gets more valuable as AI scales. So let's talk about the opportunity. Not a lot of people talk about this, the opportunity of human judgment, because this is part of the anxiety driven coverage that is completely missed. As AI makes competence abundant, the things AI cannot do become disproportionately valuable, not slightly, disproportionately. When everyone has access to the same intelligence, the differentiator is no longer analysis. Keep that in mind. You're not the only one looking for this information. It is everything analysis cannot reach. This is the human premium, and the visionary leaders are already pricing it in. So what's the principle look like? Well, there's 3 things which appreciate as machine intelligence scales. First is taste appreciates. When AI, let's say, cannot generate 1,000 adequate options, the scarce skill is knowing which one is right. Taste is not decoration. It is compressed judgment built from years of seeing what worked and what did not. It cannot be prompted into existence. Trust appreciates. In a world where any output could be machine generated, the human who is personally accountable for their word becomes more valuable, not less. Trust is one asset AI can't manufacture because trust requires someone you can let down. And the next is conviction appreciates. AI will argue any position with equal confidence. It has no stake. The leader who says, I believe this, I'm staking my name on it, follow me, that leader becomes rare and therefore more powerful in the landscape of infinitely available, perfectly hedged opinions. That is why human-centered leadership wins the AI era rather than losing it. Not despite the technology, because of what the technology makes scarce. And here's a brand example, Puma. In 2014, Puma made Rihanna a creative director, not a spokesperson, a creative director with actual authority over product. Every conventional model would have optimized toward a proven athlete endorsement because that is what historical data supported. Instead, they bet on taste. The Fenty Creeper sold out in hours and took Shoe of the Year in 2016. The data could have not have produced that call because the data had never seen it work. There was no prior. Someone with taste knew it would land. AI does not remove the need for that person. It raises their price because everything around them just got commoditized. So here's the principle in the application. First, the principle in this concept. As intelligence becomes more abundant, taste, trust, and conviction become scarce. Remember that. That's the human judgment. Scarce is where the value goes. Invest there. And here's your application I want you to apply today. Ask which of your people have taste, real judgment about quality, not just competence at output. You can get that anywhere. Then I want you to ask, are you deploying them on work only they can do, or are they buried in work a machine could now handle? This week, move one high taste person off commodity work and onto a decision that requires them to apply this taste. This is your highest return reallocation of resources now. And then concept 5 that we talk about is the augmented organization. Building the culture the balance requires. Everything we've covered so far is about you. This last concept is about everyone else, because a balance that lives only in the CEO's head is not a strategy, it's a bottleneck. The visionary leader's real job is not to personally balance machine intelligence and human judgment. It's to build an organization where 3,000 people balance it correctly without asking. And here's the leadership principle you need to understand. Augmented organizations are built on 3 cultural commitments. First, judgment is expected, not permitted. If your people believe the safe move is to do what the system said, you have built an organization that will fail in exactly the moment the system is wrong. Reward the person who overrode the model and was right. Yes, I said that. Reward the person who overrode the model and was right. Reward the person who overrode it and was wrong for the right reasons. Punish only the failure to think. Punish only the failure to think. Don't be a machine. You're a human. Second, the reasoning is visible, not just the answer. In any AI-augmented organization, anyone can produce a confident recommendation in 30 seconds. So the recommendation is no longer the work. The reasoning is the work. More people show it. Make it the thing that gets discussed. Third is the human stays accountable no matter what. Every AI-assisted decision has a name attached to it, not the model's name, a person's. The moment an organization can say the system decided, judgment has left the building, and it does not come back on its own. Get those 3 right, and AI makes your organization dramatically sharper. Get them wrong, and AI makes your organization confidently efficient and scalably wrong. And here's a brand example, the Ritz-Carlton. The Ritz-Carlton gives every single employee the authority to spend up to $2,000 per guest to solve a problem. Would you do that? No approval, no escalation, no manager. Read what that policy actually does. It's not about the money. Almost nobody ever spends it, believe it or not. What it does is tell every person in the building that their judgment is expected, that they are trusted to read a situation no matter the script anticipated, and that thinking is their job. That is culture doing the work of governance. Any organization deploying AI needs exactly that type of culture. Because the moment your people believe the safe move is to do what the system said, you have built something that will fail precisely when the system is wrong. So here's your principle from this concept. It is a balance that lives in your head is a bottleneck. Install it in the culture. Judgment expected. Reasoning visible. Humans accountable. Ask your team one question this week. When was the last time you disagreed with what a tool or system had told you and said so? If the room is quiet, you don't have an augmented organization. You have an automated one. Fix it by rewarding the next person who thinks out loud publicly in front of everyone. So here's some final thoughts I have for you on this human judgment and machine intelligence and the balance between the two. Here's what I want you to take from today. The choice between human intelligence and or machine intelligence and human judgment is a false one. And every leader who accepts the framing is already lost. The real work is architecture. Knowing precisely what you can do, drawing the judgment line deliberately, refusing to mistake fluency for truth, investing in what becomes scarce, and building a culture that holds the balance without you in the room. Today, we've covered 5 concepts. The division of labor, which is AI answers the question, only you decide if it was the right question. The judgment line, number 2, reversibility in stakes and irreversible always stays human. The fluency trap, polish is a warning, not a credential. And the human premium, taste, trust, and conviction appreciate as intelligent commoditized. Everybody's get this information. How do we make humans more valuable through taste, trust, and conviction? And the augmented organization, which is judgment is expected, reasoning is visible, and humans are accountable. None of this is anti-AI. I'm not saying that. I use these tools every day, and they made me much sharper. That is exactly the point. The tool got more powerful, which means the judgment directing it matters more, not less. A better instrument in the hands of someone who cannot hear is still noise. Here's your challenge this week off of these concepts. Find the one decision you have quietly handed to a system. The one you stopped really thinking about because the output was good enough and you were busy. Take it back this week. I want you to sit with it. Apply the judgment only you can apply. Then decide, deliberate whether it goes back to the machine or it stays with you. That single act, reclaiming one decision and choosing on purpose, is the entire discipline in miniature. The machine does not know what matters. That is still your job, and it will always be. So visualize, conceptualize, and realize. And if this episode resonated with you, I encourage you to pick up a copy of my latest book, The Visionary Leader, The Success Principles of the World's Greatest Visionaries. It's available now at Amazon, wherever books are sold. And the book really draws directly from the frameworks we discuss on the Visionary Chronicles, and it's really your blueprint for building the kind of leadership that creates generational impact. And the link is in the show notes. And also, if you're a CMO, founder, brand leader, and you'd like to apply these frameworks I discuss directly to your business, I work with a select number of clients on a private advisory basis through Liquid Mind. You know, if that's you, visit liquidmindadvisory.com, LIQUIDMIND advisory.com, and set up a free meeting. Just want to hear what your thoughts are, next steps you need to take with your brand or you personally as a leader. And also, one quick ask I have, and I ask this before you go. If this episode gave you one idea you can use this week, would you take 30 seconds to leave a review on Apple Podcasts? The most important thing is it just leaves an algorithm this show says that this show is worth finding. And really for me in doing this podcast is that hopefully I can provide insight to those that are looking for valuable information on how to become a better leader, a better team member, and looking to build a generational brand, product, or service. And scroll to the ratings and reviews, leave an honest review. I read every single one of them, and I thank you for it because it does extend the reach of the Visionary Chronicles, and it absolutely helps people to find the podcast. And I get hundreds of people that reach out to me and asking me questions off the podcast, and that's what I treasure the most. And for weekly brand strategy and leadership insights I don't share anywhere else, subscribe to the Visionary Advisory newsletter at bryansmeltzer.com. The link is in the notes. And coming up in the next 2 weeks, I think 2 to 3 weeks here, we're going to start a series, an 8-part series, because of the success of the first 2 that we did. And we got literally a thousands of people that were reaching out in regards to when are you going to do the next series. And for me, it's probably the one that is most correlated to the visionary leader. It's the road to visionary leadership. And that'll start in a couple of weeks. So please tune in for that. So again, I appreciate your time listening to the Visionary Chronicles today, where the future is created by those bold enough to shape it. And until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, keep shaping the future. Stay true, stay authentic, be different, be great. But most of all, enjoy the journey along the way. I'm Bryan Smeltzer, and I will see you in the next Visionary Chronicles.